Blog Talk Radio.
Something's gone wrong. For all our vigilance and battle-scarred over the Bill of Rights, we let the flame of freedom's torch grow cold. Because there can be no torch to pass where there's no flame.
Freedom has only one enemy it cannot defeat, and that is negligence. So your presence here, now, today, is an act of reverence. Of all man's works beneath the heavens, none shines brighter than our Constitution. I think Jefferson and Paine, Adams, Madison, Mason, Franklin, I think they're looking down right now at us. I think they understand what we're trying to do, what we strive to do. Every time our country stands in the path of danger, an instinct seems to summon her finest first, those who truly understand her. When freedom shivers in the cold shadow of true peril, it's always the patriots who first hear the call. When loss of liberty is looming, as it is now, the siren sounds first in the hearts of freedom's vanguard.
Good evening, everybody. This is Joe Joseph, along with my co-host, John King. A.C. Griffith will be calling in shortly. We're joined tonight by Mr. John Moore. John Moore is the author and creator of a very, very interesting presentation called Global Warming, What the Government Isn't Telling You. And I want to give a little background on John Moore. And to do that, just going to read his bio real quick for you folks. John Moore first fought terrorism in 1967. He's still fighting it today. Walking patrol in Vietnam at night alone, he searched for terrorist booby traps. He searched for terrorist bombs with his Jeep and saw what happened to those who did not find them. JR flew 57 combat missions over Vietnam and Cambodia, many of those being hit by enemy gunfire. John went on to join the Green Berets at Fort Bragg, where he trained to invade the Middle East. He also did classified studies of Middle East terrorists for the Special Forces. Special ops, covert ops, psychological operations, undercover ops, surveillance operations, bodyguard for executives and stars like Jane Fonda and Charlton Heston, private investigator, firearms instructor, intelligence analyst, and homicide detective. These are the jobs that have kept JR busy. He also found time to be a husband, father, and grandfather. And John King, you there, John?
Yes, I am, Joe.
Very good, very good. And I
very impressive resume. The body the most.
Yeah, it is.
And of course, played the part of Moses.
Very impressive indeed. Without further ado, I'd like to introduce John Moore to the show. John, can you hear me?
Joe, thank you for having me. Was that my president at that intro there?
No.
Heston?
Yeah, it was yes, that was Charlton Heston. Yeah.
Well, he's my president, even though he's dead. He'll always be my president. The NRA hired me to be in charge of his security detail. There was a huge NRA gun rights rally in St. Louis, and I put together a security detail to protect him, and he was just the most pleasant gentleman and very humble that I've ever met. It was just a pure delight to be part of that detail that day.
I'm a very big admirer of him and what he did with the NRA, which is why I use him for my intro, because some of his speeches, he just had a gift of being able to get the point across in the way only he could really do it.
Absolutely. Yeah. And John King, you're right. When he came to St. Louis, a number of the people in the audience had signs alluding to his Moses part, and women between 20 and 80 years old just wanted to be close to him. It was amazing.
If I had the opportunity, I'd want to be close to him. I'll tell you what.
Well, to quote him, from my cold dead hands.
That's right. That's right.
You know what's ironic about that, gentleman? That photograph of him and that quote was circulated all over the country. Something I come to find out is that liberals cannot tell the difference between a modern firearm currently issued to the military and the 200-year-old flintlock he held over his hand.
That's ridiculous.
Well, I thought it was ridiculous too, but it's a fact. It can't tell the difference.
And I see that Griff, you're online now, are you?
Yes, sir. I'm with you.
Oh, that's fantastic. FYI, folks, just so you know, Griff has been battling some severe attacks on his computer systems, and they're really crippling. But one thing that they cannot cripple is his $15 Radio Shack phone corded. They cannot take that away from him, and he's always so crystal clear when he calls. And I certainly do appreciate that.
Thank you, Joe. I had trouble getting in on the phone line tonight. I had to dial 3 times and then do some other maneuvering. So the heat is on.
It certainly is. It certainly is. But, Griff, I know that you've seen it, and John, you've experienced it also. The interesting earth changes that we've been experiencing over the past couple of years or so. I know that the media has dispelled these earth changes and said, oh, no, it's fraudulent. And the way that they were marketing these earth changes was indeed fraudulent. To say that it's cow farts and humans that are the main cause of it is absolutely false. That's correct. But what they fail to acknowledge is that these earth changes are happening and at a rapid pace. And I'm glad to have you on the show, John, so that you can give these listeners, our listeners, an opportunity to hear what really is going on as far as that's concerned. And
okay.
So if you could, can you give people an overview about what's really going on with these earth changes right now and what we're experiencing?
Well, it may be good to begin from the beginning.
Sure.
Because otherwise it may not make any sense. About 2001, I was approached by a couple of friends of mine who are independent researchers. They approached me independently. One didn't know the other was doing it. And they told me about an event that would be happening in the near future. And I thought they were, quite frankly, a bit loony and needed tinfoil hats when they told me about a new planetary-sized object coming into our solar system. But I've known these men to be serious men, so I went to a friend of mine with this information who has, shall we say, privileged access. And he basically regarded me the same way. He said, oh, come on, John, this can't be real, but I'll check it out anyway. We checked it out with his inside sources. He gets back with me a few weeks later. He says, John, it's exactly what you said it is. The government's known about this since 1979 when they confirmed it with the Pioneer 10 space probe. They've been tracking it ever since, and they started building their shelters almost immediately. Well, that was 31 years ago when they started that. Now, my research continued through 2001, 2002, and the summer of 2005, I'm having lunch with another friend. I served with in U.S. Army Special Forces. He left the Special Forces, went into the Navy, and retired from the Navy, U.S. Submarine Corps. And we're having lunch, and I'm telling him about Earth changes in the 10th planet, and he starts telling me about a classified briefing that he attended in 1985 in the Submarine Corps. At that briefing, he was told that the following: gentlemen, during your lifetimes, not your children's, not your grandchildren's, during your lifetimes, these oceans are going to come out of their basins and cause massive flooding on all coastal areas worldwide. The Mississippi River will be 100, 200 feet deep, split the country in two. There'll be at least 3 9-point-plus earthquakes on a New Madrid seismic zone once that water is bearing down on the New Madrid seismic zone. And basically, the world as we know it will come to an end. They were also told, gentlemen, the place to survive this is one of the places is the Arkansas, Missouri Ozarks for the following reasons: altitude above sea level, distance from major population centers, long growing season, plenty of water, very homogeneous population, mostly WASPs, white Anglo-Saxon Protestants. He kept that information under his hat all these years. After hearing that, I got together with him and we started recreating the map he was shown that you saw, Joe, in my video, and it's also in my paper. The map, recreating the map of the U.S. Navy showed up in the briefing. I took the map we worked on and worked with 2 more submarine veterans independently to get a finished product that's very closely conforms to the Navy map that's been shown beginning in 1979. Now, since those initial 3 debriefs, I've debriefed more than a dozen, probably closer to 20 of these Navy veterans, mostly submarine veterans, who were at these briefings. One of them was at the 1979 briefing. He wasn't in the room when the briefing took place. He was a 22-year-old sailor who set up the lights, the tables, the chairs, the sound system, and he saw the map on the wall in 1979. And in 2009, he saw my DVD 30 years later. He calls me up. I've interviewed him on my radio show a couple of times. By the way, I do 8 radio shows 6 days a week on 4 different networks. And he says, John, for the last 30 years, I wondered what that map meant because I wasn't an admiral. It was a weekend briefing for admirals only. He said, John, admirals don't do weekend briefings. But they showed up for this, and you were in the Navy, Joe. These guys, they all were ring knockers, been to the academy together. They'd known each other for 20-plus years.
Sure.
They're slapping each other on the back, smoking cigars when they show up. How's the wife? How's the kids? How's the grandkids? Well, that's when they got to the meeting. When they left the meeting, there was no cigar smoking, no slapping on the back. The guy who set this meeting up, he said, I've never seen such somber men in all my life. It's like they just buried their favorite puppy. So that's the deal. The U.S. government's known about this for 31 years. They've been preparing for it for 31 years. Now, probably everybody, or many of the people listening to us in this audience, have watched the DVD Camp FEMA.
Yes.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Look at a map of where those camps are. And think about this. How many of them are close to the East Coast, the West Coast, or the Gulf Coast? About 3. About 3. Now, that's where most of the people are, by the way.
Right.
75% of the people in this country live within 100 miles of the East Coast, the West Coast, and the Gulf Coast. I'm in flyover country. There's not many people here. We're very sparsely populated. But there's all these stories in the patriot community. Oh, they're going to arrest the Christians. They're going to round up the gun guys. Well, maybe they're just building these camps because they're going to need them because there's going to be
refugees.
Millions of refugees.
Right, and that's kind of my stance on it too. Is that there's more to it than meets the eye. You cannot just look at the FEMA camps and keep that as the only thing that you look at, because that's tunnel vision. You have to look at the big picture and see how else they're preparing outside of the FEMA camps.
Absolutely. Now, gentlemen, I spent most of my adult life as a homicide detective. I investigated my first homicide began in September 1973. I'm working on 2 homicides right now. I'm working to get a cold case reactivated, and we got one that we're doing some touch-up on. I've developed 2 skills to a fairly high degree in that career path, finding witnesses and taking statements. And that's what I did with these Navy veterans. They are the witnesses. I found the witnesses, and I took their statements. I'm also trained as a legal assistant and researcher, both in college and the U.S. military intelligence. And here's some things I'll give you guys to reflect on, what I would call circumstantial evidence that the government is getting ready. And these are simple Google searches anybody can do to find press releases from these government agencies and other related items. First Google search, CIA and the word Denver. You do that and you find the CIA beginning in 2005 started moving their people from Langley, Virginia, right next to the Atlantic Ocean, about 85 feet above sea level, to the Mile High City. Next Google search, NSA, no such agency, National Security Agency. Same thing, and Denver, NSA and the word Denver. They're moving from Fort Meade, Maryland, very near the Atlantic Ocean, to the Mile High City. They're also moving to the desert 20 miles south of Salt Lake City. They're also moving to Augusta, Georgia, and probably other places we're not aware of. They are very secret about what they do. In fact, the NSA's budget is at least 4 times more than the CIA's. Next Google search. This is kind of unusual. Now, Joe, if you and I were going to study really fun stuff like